It is such a blessing to have Rabbi Michael Marmur with us as our scholar in residence this Shabbat, this weekend. And he'll be teaching 4 times throughout the weekend. I hope you'll take advantage of every opportunity. For many of us, welcoming him is a way of feeling close again to his father, Rabbi Dov Marmur, of blessed memory. And Michael is speaking on different themes each of these 4 sessions, and tonight's address is on the theme of anxiety and hope. So in anticipation of his arrival from Jerusalem, I took down from my shelves Rabbi Marmur Sr.'s books. Michael has many books of his own. Rabbi Dov Marmur wrote a number of books, and it was just another blessing to be able to return to them. And I found some of the similar themes to parallel each of Michael's teachings this weekend. So in Rabbi Marmur's book called The Star of Return, Judaism After the Holocaust, Rabbi Dov Marmur quotes from a Catholic philosopher and scholar named William Lynch from his book, Images of Hope. And he says that we need to imagine the real, that hope is an exercise in imagining the real. Dov Marmur quotes Lynch saying, "Hope is, in its most general terms, a sense of the possible, that what we really need is possible, though difficult, while hopelessness means to be ruled by the sense of the impossible. Hope, therefore, involves 3 basic ideas that could not be simpler. 1, what I hope for, I do not yet have or see. 2, it may be difficult, but 3, I can have it. It is possible." Rabbi Michael Marmur is the Associate Professor of Jewish Theology at Hebrew Union College in Jerusalem. He has written many books. He teaches worldwide. He really is the best of the Reform rabbinate and a favorite teacher among rabbinical students and rabbis everywhere. It is a pleasure to welcome you back to Holy Blossom Temple.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Splansky, and Shabbat Shalom to everyone. It is a great pleasure to be here. Now, if you were to ask the internet, which is always correct, what is the origin of the expression rise and shine, you would find a range of different answers. On some websites, they tell you that it is a familiar call in the British Army, which it was for many years. Wakey, wakey, rise and shine, followed by words too rude to mention for the young, innocent ears here at the temple. And one explanation I saw, which was delightful but completely wrong, was that it is an invitation to get up and shine your shoes. Those who are responsible for the African American spiritual, which was the basis of then a children's song you might know, Rise and Shine and Give God the Glory, they knew better. They knew that the expression rise and shine comes from the prophet, a prophet I tend to pronounce as Isaiah, but I don't know how you pronounce his name. The prophet Yeshayahu, let's go Hebrew, that's less controversial, he has an expression which may actually sound familiar from something we sang earlier in the Lachadodi, in the Sabbath hymn, because there is an expression which reads, rise and shine. It appears in tomorrow's Haftarah, the reading from the prophetic literature which is associated with this Shabbat. And this is how it sounds in the original, nothing to do with shining shoes. Kumi ori, kiva orech, uchvod Adonai alayich zarach. Arise, shine, for your light is come, and the glory of Adonai is risen upon you. That's the origin of rise and shine. I want to give you a little bit of inside baseball grammar about this verse. It doesn't mean shine your shoes, that's for sure. nor does it mean arise and be shiny. The Hebrew says somewhat remarkably, ori, which means be a light. That's actually what the words mean. It doesn't say get up in the morning and affect a sunny disposition. It doesn't mean always look on the bright side of life. It doesn't even mean the sun will come out tomorrow, bet your bottom dollar, or here comes the sun. We could do song lyrics all night as far as I'm concerned. All of those things are beautiful, but they're somewhat passive. The sun will come out tomorrow, that's based on a kind of general belief. The prophet Isaiah says, arise and be a light. It's a different concept. It's a more engaging concept. It's a more profound expression of hope. And as Rabbi Splansky mentioned, hope is one of the themes that I want to talk in the next couple of minutes, just mention to you. And it's paired in an unlikely way, not faith and hope, not hope and charity, but anxiety and hope. What possible connection can there be between anxiety and hope? My argument in a book I've recently published is that anxiety and hope are at the root of Jewish creativity. Now, we experience anxiety as a negative. It's an often crippling medical condition. It can paralyze rather than galvanize. How can anxiety be an engine of creativity? Well, I want to suggest, and this isn't based on zero medical knowledge, that anxiety is like cholesterol. There's a bad kind and there's a good kind. The bad kind is what leaves you completely incapable of action. And I want to tell you, such anxiety is fully justified in our current moment, in Israel, where I live, and in the world in general. You have every right to respond with the bad kind of anxiety. But the prophet says, rise up and be a light. The good kind of anxiety, which I want to point to, is one which doesn't drive us into escapism, but forces us to ask a question, what are we going to do about our current malaise? How are we going to move forward? And in my book, I mention a number of examples from Jewish history where profound anxiety has been translated into an engine of change. Two examples I'll mention. 1,000 years ago, Saadia Gaon, one of the greatest philosophers of the Jewish Middle Ages, writes a book, the Book of Beliefs and Opinions, and he says, why did I write the book? Because everywhere I went, people were drowning. He wasn't referring to a tsunami. He was referring, as it were, to a tsunami of doubt. It's to do with the Karaite heresy and Islamic ideas and all sorts of other things that we don't need to get into. But what he said is, as I went around, I realized there was no diver, that's the expression he uses, who was there to offer a way out for the people who were sinking. Now, that doesn't suggest that he was overly burdened by modesty, but it does imply that rather than just look at the crisis, he asked himself, how am I to be a light? What should I do in response? Another example of this is a book published by Jonathan Sacks, the late Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, which of all of his book titles, it's the one which puts the anxiety at the front. It's a book called Will We Have Jewish Grandchildren? You're not left guessing what's the anxiety that is the engine of his creativity. But he's put his finger on a real anxiety that many of us may have experienced. And then he asks the question, what are we going to do about this? So anxiety, I'm suggesting to you, is not all bad news. There's a bad kind and a good kind. And now I'm going to say something slightly more unsettling. The same can be said of hope. How can there be a bad kind of hope? Surely all hope is good. It's all profit. No. It was the German Jewish philosopher Hannah Arendt who pointed to the limitations and the challenges of hope. Hope which becomes self-delusion, hope which stops you from facing up to the enormity of the challenge you face, hope which replaces reasoned thought, is not your friend. But there is, of course, a positive hope. The word tikva, the Hebrew word for hope, has two core etymologies. There are two different, quite opposite ways of explaining what the word means. One is linked to the Hebrew word kav, which means a thread or a line. Just as the words of listening to my father's words from his book, I realized just how influenced by me he was in so much of his work. A kav, a thread, be it ever so small, be it ever so flimsy, which even in the depths, in the grip of a crisis situation, you find, you hang on to, and it may lead you to a possible tomorrow. So one etymology of the word tikva, hope, is that it's a thread, it's a cord. The other origin, the putative origin of this word, is like the Hebrew word mikveh, which is a pool. Hope in this sense is a reservoir. It's the resources we turn to, not when things are shiny and happy and bright, but when we are indeed in crisis. It's our community, it's our family, it's our friends, it's our faith, it's the cultural life we build, it's the things we work for. Our notion of tikva, the good hope, lives both in this notion of a thread, be it ever so tiny, which we're invited to grab onto, and the notion of a pool in which we can immerse ourselves and somehow emerge into a possible tomorrow. These last years in Israel have tested the limits of our anxiety and the limits of our hope. And we've learned more new things about what hope might be. Maoz Yinon, both of whose parents were murdered on the 7th of October, and who is himself a remarkable social entrepreneur, promoting coexistence work and peace work in bold and innovative ways. Maoz Yinon says, people ask me if I have hope, and it's the wrong question. Hope is not something you have, he says. Hope is something you do. Which brings us back to the prophet Isaiah, who doesn't say, arise and think happy thoughts. He says, Kumi ori, arise and be a light. As we experience together the joy of being together on this Shabbat, it would be friendly not to raise all of these difficult and uncomfortable notions of anxiety, but it would be disingenuous. The way for us to proceed, even the way for us to build Menuchat Shabbat, the peace of Shabbat, is not by pretending that everything is rosy in the garden, because it isn't. Rather, it is by trying to identify the good anxiety which galvanizes us and activates us, and the good hope which provides us with a thread of possibility and a pool of support and a call for action. We are called upon this Shabbat and every day to search for a thread, to find a reservoir, to face up to horror and challenge, to rise up, and even in great darkness, to strive to be a light. Shabbat Shalom.